Donna, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. We're going to talk about reinvention, and I can't think of anyone better placed to talk about reinvention than you. So, by way of introduction, your career has spanned working in care sector for 14 years, building an interior decorating design business while at the same time studying for a BA Hons in spatial design, training as a peak performance coach, NLP master practitioner, as well as being mum to 4 children. And you've also written and published 5 books. Goodness me.
How that happened, I've got no idea.
Well, we're going to find out. I feel exhausted just describing this, so it's not a surprise that Overwhelm actually led to a breakdown for you. Do you want to talk to me about that? What happened?
It was mid-90s. My youngest daughter of 4 was having problems at school, and she was being bullied, but she was already school phobic before that, which made it even worse. And then in the end, she just started to get with the kids that she felt would protect her, who were just really preying on her, basically. So she went down this path of being one of those angry teenagers. And she ended up out of school because she just wouldn't go. And I had to educate her at home, which at the time I didn't have the skills to do that. I took her to work with me, and I thought that's probably the best thing for her, is to come to work, because if I left her at home, she'd just be having a rave and her friends would be trashing the house, which had happened a couple of times. So I couldn't leave her at home. So I had to take her with me. And all of that, with all of what had gone before, was like, I can't do this anymore. There's just no way. Which was brought on by her being in one of my decorating clients' beds. I was, where are you? And she's asleep in the bed because she'd been out all night or something stupid where she'd escaped. And it was just horrific, actually, when I think back to it now. But you just, like in all families, get up and get on with it. You just do what's in front of you without much thought to what else is happening outside. It becomes everything. And it became like my world just shrank right down to getting up and going to work and just doing what I could to keep her out of trouble and getting into more pickles. So all of that, with the other kids as well, it just all got too much. So I just ended up, I can't do this. So it was then looking at what skills have I got that I can use, that I can be at home and work from home and build a business around that. Because for me, going and working for somebody else wasn't an option at all. I needed to do it from home. So because I'd done all the coaching as part of my own business development, and just being able to ask for the money and do basic stuff like that, just even being able to go to people's houses and say, I'm worth this much. For a long time, I couldn't do it. I'd go away and write really detailed quotes and to justify why I was charging them £80 a day for my time. This is like early in the 90s. And I think the decorators at the time were charging a lot more than that. The male decorators were being paid over £100 a day at the time. And I was feeling like £80 was the most I'd earned in a day at that time,
Something then that alerted you to the fact that you wanted to do some work on yourself. Did that expose something in you then?
It absolutely did, yeah. Because even though I'd done all of that coaching and had spent years helping others through, when I got to a point where I was like helping others to get to the place where they were comfortable in their own skin. But I hadn't actually realised that it was me not being comfortable in my own skin that was causing all these other dramas going on in my own life. And it's only perhaps in the last 10 years that I've even realised that's what it was. Because when you're in it, you can't actually see what's going on. You can't see the entirety of it. It's only when you're out of it and you can take that bird's eye view and look and see where things all fit together. You can only connect the dots looking back. You can't connect them looking forward.
You started to work from home, do your coaching. What else did you do?
To begin with, it was mostly just coaching, developing programs. I was really good at developing programs that helped other people. So I'd see a problem, or I'd have people come to me with a specific problem. And then I would be easily able to break it down into component parts, which was probably due to the skills that I learned when I was doing design work. Because when you're studying an undergraduate level in design, you know, they gave us a pile of cereal boxes, for example. On the first day we were there, they gave us all just plonked down a load of cereal boxes and said, build something. And everyone just sat there looking at each other. What do you mean build something? And they were like, well, build something. And they're like, well, what do you want us to build? We don't know, just build something. So it's that ability. I could see that there were different things that needed to be resolved where other people were concerned, and very quickly be able to design something that would fit that or find the solution to that problem, which is how I ended up writing Diamondology, writing the book, The Art of Effective Communication. It's all because I could see a problem. And the same with the gift. And actually, when I think back, one of my clients said working with me felt like I'd picked him up by the ankles and shook him out, and his whole entire life's experiences all just dropped out on the floor. And then we were sorting through it, just picking out what worked for him, what wasn't working for him, what he actually liked from all of that and what he didn't like, and just sifting through in a way that allowed him to actually make conscious choices as opposed to making knee-jerk reactions. Oh, well, my wife wants me to do this, and I've always carried this thought that I need to prove myself to my parents. I mean, we don't carry that thought, but we carry that as an impression for many years. So that needing to prove oneself as we grow up is quite strong, and it actually guides a lot of our internal processes without us being consciously aware of it.
Yes. So did you stop doing your interior design straight away?
No, I still carried on actually for a little while, a few odd decorating jobs, and actually right up until during the COVID years, I still did a bit of decorating here and there, but I haven't actually done any for probably about 3-4 years now, only my own.
So how did you start to get clarity for yourself then?
Introspection, looking at firstly, what did I want? It's all very well helping others, but when I was starting to look at how, like, I've got 8 grandchildren, by the way, and 2 of them lived with us for a while. And what that taught me was actually we can either be tossed around by life circumstances or we can make conscious choices. And being conscious about what we choose to do is not always easy because we've got all that past conditioning that's all carried in our cells. So I suppose when I started with plant meds, like ended up in an ayahuasca ceremony in 2015, which was an interesting experience. And the plant medicine showed me lots of things about how my life had unfolded and how I was governed by fear, basically, and how every decision that I'd possibly made up to that point was based on fear of something. And then none of that was conscious, not at all on any level. And mostly after that, I lost that innate fear of doing something wrong or not quite being perfect.
Wow.
Because before that, I didn't want to release some of the books because they're not perfect. They're like, what if other people don't like it? And all that other BS that we have going on here, or what I call shit chat.
Yes.
And the plant medicines were instrumental. And then I discovered breathwork. So I ended up at a retreat and training in breathwork. And I say ended up quite because a lot of these things I didn't consciously choose to go and do them. They were introduced in a way that was like a friend had said, "Oh, I'm doing this. Would you like to come along?" And because I'd started to get into the habit of saying yes to things instead of saying no out of fear of, whatever other people might think, I began to go to things that were completely out of my comfort zone and completely not in my normal realm of experience. So breathwork was quite an experience, very much an eye-opener. That very first 10-day retreat that I did took me 6 months to integrate the changes.
Wow.
We were doing sessions twice a day, plus all the other things that went around it in that first 10 days. And when I came back, I had no reference points for anything. And what I mean by that is other people started to say, "You've really changed. There's things that are really different." So then when I started to ask them what is different, they would say, "Well, you don't react in the same way anymore. You seem really calm. You're more grounded." So there was all these things that people were saying, and I started to recognize where people were purposefully trying to do their best to trigger me in various ways, and I wasn't taking the I wasn't taking the bait basically anymore. And so I started to be able to see through what other people's behavior was doing and how I was around certain people and how that had changed. So before that I hadn't really noticed it because all my efforts were all focused on other people and I hadn't really looked at myself in that great way.
So that's tremendously liberating. It must have been an amazing feeling, was it?
Now it feels amazing. I mean, and it is very liberating. I think when I stopped being fearful of what other people thought, that was the liberation point. Because it no longer mattered to me that, you know, my mum might not agree with it, or my partner might not agree with it. That those things, and I was ready with not a reply or a response or even a reaction. It was very much that didn't even enter my head. There was never the thought, never the process was never, well, if I do this, they might not like it. It's just I just did it. So I ended up also going on a course a whole year called Natural Wisdom Leaders by two teachers, Davina and Nizami. And that was so in depth, and that was looking at me, like there was 12 of us in that group and we were all looking at our own stuff. And actually that, on top of doing the consistent breath work, carrying on with the plant medicines and just doing this really deep inner work and looking at my own patterns and my own ways of operating and seeing where the roots of all those things were in a very conscious and very grounded way. So
Plant medicines might be a stretch too far for some people when their lives initially aren't working. So, what kind of things are there things people should be looking out for when? I suppose we were talking about reinvention. Are there signs that start to emerge for people that you can give some guidance on in terms of what are the things you should be looking out for when you feel that potentially some change is afoot or needed, and how can they navigate that? What can they do
yeah.
to start?
Well, I think first of all, we all know when things are not right. We all know instinctively, we know, intuitively, we know. My ex-husband had a job for 40 years and he used to say, I'm treated like a mushroom and fed a load of SHIT and kept in the dark. Well, you don't have to do that. You can set up on your own. And then it took COVID before he would do that. So the knock-on impact for him was that he ended up with heart disease. I'm not saying that was the direct cause, but when you're consistently suppressing what you really want to be able to do, then it will manifest itself in some form of disease. And when you bring in social media and start looking at what everybody else is doing and thinking that your own life is less than, that causes anxiety and depression, because you know you can do more, you know you want more, and you know that how life is for you at the moment is not what you really want it to be. But it's safe. We become like safe in what we're doing and not wanting to rock the boat and not, you know.
You're absolutely right. And I think going back to what you said earlier about you didn't realize that you were so afraid and so full of fear, I would go so far as to say that we all live a fearful life to a greater or lesser degree, whether we're aware of it or we're not. And it really does get in the way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And actually, it's healthy to have some fear, you know, like it's life preserving, because it, you know, like if you lived in a country where there's poisonous spiders, it's right to be scared of those and have some fear around those spiders. And if you lived in the jungle and you've got tigers and things that can eat you, it's right to have fear around that. But just getting out of bed and doing the thing that sets your heart alight with joy and passion, the passion that comes with that. It's not right to be scared of that. And so if we are feeling like that, then we need to take a serious look at what we're doing and start to make changes. Because otherwise it erodes your confidence and yourself, you know, that's the way that you view yourself. And that happens over time.
Yes, and I suppose then the longer it goes on, the deeper you get in the hole, the harder it is to get out of it. So, what are the signs? This sort of, you said you know, really,
Yeah, you know.
but how can you then make some changes? What are the steps for people?
Well, I'd say the first step would be to really just find a quiet place, somewhere where you're not going to be, you know, where you're not someone's mum, sister, mother, brother, if it's a woman, same for men if they're like, or whatever gender you are. You know, just find somewhere quiet and maybe sit with a journal or just sit without any of that stuff and just think about what you would like, rather than, because we can get stuck in the, oh well, I don't like this and I don't like that, and often we won't say what we want through whatever fear based. And going and sitting under a tree, you know, like out in on a really nice day, and just sitting there with nothing and just doing nothing and just being, can listen to what's going on in your heart, what's going on in your body, and you automatically know what you actually want. There is not one person on this earth that doesn't truthfully know what they really want,
Yes.
even if they have to access it through what they don't want first, by saying, I don't want this and I don't want that. And even if you had to make a list of, I don't want this in my life, this, and making a whole list. And then on the flip side of that is, so what would not that look like? So then you're looking at what is, you know, so what would it be like if it wasn't that which you said you didn't want, then what would it be? So that way you've got the flip side of it. And for some people, you have to start there,
Yeah.
because it's so ingrained in them that they're not worthy, or they're not enough, or they're not, you know, and they don't even realise it. I didn't realise it for many years.
What have been the defining moments in your life, would you say?
That's a big question.
That's a big question. I mean, if you don't feel that there have been, that it's been
So
a progression.
so when you say defining moments, what do you actually mean by that?
Okay. So when there's a shift in your thinking, when your current way of operating just isn't working anymore and you can't pretend to yourself any longer that you can do this.
Children have helped me see quite a few defining moments, having had four, or having brought up four children. Self-inquiry has been, well, it's not pleasant, and it can be very, it can be very sticky. Do you know what I mean? All those self-inquiry moments. But actually, when we recognise that actually there is nothing that has happened to us that hasn't been for us, and no matter how messy or how nasty or how vile that situation is, when we integrate that experience and heal ourselves from that experience, we can use it in a way that allows us to not only empower ourselves but help empower other people.
Yeah.
And I've always had a fundamental belief that it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, what you've experienced, that you've got something of value to offer the world. And that's actually been like an underlying core belief that I've had right from a child, that's been carried through. Partly, like when I think about some of the experiences that I've had, I think, wow. So all of those experiences have been to assist me in being able to hold the space for people to just be themselves, for people to be able to go through whatever process they need to go through in a way that doesn't deny. Sometimes as a parent, when a child falls over and you brush the knee and you might say, oh, they're there, that doesn't hurt much. It's like we start at that time minimizing their experience.
Yeah.
And we don't even recognize that's what we're doing. Because we don't know any different. So it's only when we start to recognize those things in ourselves, where we're doing that for others and where we're doing that to ourselves and minimizing. And so we're not minimizing experience and we're not maximizing it. We're looking at it through a lens that's like, it was there to help us to grow in some way. And I'm not denying that, there are some pretty horrific experiences that people have, and not denying that in any way, and hideous, and I wouldn't want to be them in that situation. But we have a choice in how we represent that to ourselves.
Yes, the stories we tell ourselves. I think it was Wayne Dyer who said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And I think that's such a powerful sentence, and it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah, it is true. And I think that's Byron Katie also, with her work, when she does the turnaround, that's really powerful as well. It's a really powerful way to look at life experiences and, dissecting them in a way that's healthy, rather than going into the experience and feeling sorry for yourself, because it's like, it does at the end, when we're looking back over our lives and we're looking at what defined us, I often find that it's those that gave us the power to do the work that we're doing today.
Well,
But we can only do that if we integrate the experience.
It takes you immediately out of victim mode, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And puts you
Victim
into
is
a more powerful state. While we're talking about people like Byron Katie, who personally I loved her book, Loving What Is.
Yeah.
So simple and yet
Four
so
questions.
powerful. And mentioning Wayne Dyer, who have been the big influences in your life in the personal development world?
So Bob Proctor has been the one that has been a mentor for a long time, but a lot of the work that he did was actually sharing other mentors and other people that inspired him as well. In his over 60 years of working in the personal development industry, He introduced me to Neville Goddard and the work of Napoleon Hill. Like the work of Napoleon Hill, 25 years he was studying success and what made people successful. And that went into a book called Think and Grow Rich. But he wrote many other books at the time, but they were so advanced for the time that he was advised not to publish them.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's loads of books that he wrote, all on personal development, and then he regularly gave lectures. There's also Earl Nightingale. I mean, there's not. I don't know whether you can see behind me, but I've got a whole library of books. I mean, I'm just fascinated. Catherine Ponder, and like just blows my mind in
'Cause
terms of.
But you actually trained in person with Bob Proctor, didn't you? And were you
I
one of
did.
the first Bob Proctor trained coaches in the UK?
So he used to run a company called Life Success, and then along with Sandy Gallagher, they built the Proctor Gallagher consultancy. And I was one of the first 6 in the UK to be trained as a thinking into results facilitator, which is a 24-week program of personal development. It's just mind-blowing, the changes. And he always used to say, it's really funny because he always used to say, and in the early days, it's like, by the time you finish this, you'll need a telescope to see how far you've come. And I used to think that, don't be silly. But actually, it's true. You do. It's just an amazing program.
And was that the first time you really understood the power of limiting beliefs through your work with him?
Yeah, and the subconscious mind. I mean, so I've got this, I don't know, my stick man. So it's a teaching tool, basically. So Bob always taught about the stick man, right? So this is obviously, you've got the head, which represents the mind and the body. So you've got the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. Right, so the conscious mind gives the instruction to the subconscious mind, which then gets the body gets in alignment with what the emotion. This is the emotional mind. The body gets in alignment, and which then gives us our results. So depending on what's going on up here and what's going on in our emotional mind is what determines our outcomes. So if we're constantly being tossed around by circumstances and allowing everybody else to tell us what we can and can't do, we're not going to get the results that we want. So we have to get all this in alignment to be able to. But it's a stick man. You can actually, there's lots of teaching videos online. You can find Bob actually teaching about the stick man.
Really?
Yeah.
So if we have these limiting beliefs and we're not getting the results in life that we want because of these limiting beliefs, is that really what's showing us the fact that we're not getting the results, that we've got these limiting beliefs, the fact that we're not getting the life that we want, or we say we consciously want? That's an indication, isn't it, that there's limiting beliefs getting in the way? And then how do you reprogram those?
Yeah, it's the $64 million question, isn't it?
Absolutely is, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's actually different for every single person.
Really?
Yeah, because we've all got different experiences. I mean, there are a few things that are the same, like looking at, well, first of all, deciding what you really want. Like if you can't decide what you really want, then you're not going to change anything. You're just going to carry on being flip-flopping around doing, at the mercy of everybody else. So
Is that why goal setting's powerful then? If you write down goals, it's that something where you're headed.
Yeah, and actually, a lot of the teachers like Wayne Dyer and a lot of the other really well-known teachers, they all teach that the goal that you're seeking is seeking you. Carl Jung even spoke about that in his work as well. Yeah, so making a decision about the goal, where you want to go, and then from that is knowing that we already know how to do the thing that we want to do. And interestingly, they talk about desire. And they talk about the creator puts the desire in, but he doesn't do that without the knowing that you've already got everything that you need to get there.
So in a way, we almost get in our own way.
Yeah, totally. And that's because of fear and lack of self-trust.
Programming and the conditioning that we've been subjected to throughout our lives that we allow to rule us.
Yeah. Yeah, and not listening to yourself. Like one of Bob's teachings was about the intellectual faculties. So we've got 6 intellectual faculties that often are not used to their full extent. And Napoleon Hill talked about them as our higher mind. Their perception, will, reasoning, memory, 6. Imagination, intuition, perception, will, reason, and memory. Right? So imagination, we all have the ability to dream. But our school system is like when you're sitting in the classroom daydreaming, you get like told that stop daydreaming. That's not how it's supposed to be. But actually, we need to dream more. And Michael Gerber, the business strategist, he runs dreaming rooms for business owners.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's E-Myth. Michael Gerber, who wrote the E-Myth. So he runs dreaming rooms because he says that the business owners don't dream big enough. They only go for set their goals for what they think they can believe. Well, Bob used to teach that there's 3 levels of goals. You've got your A-type goal, which is the goal that you know how to reach, the goal that you've already done a million times.
Yeah.
And then you've got your B-type goals, which are the goals that you there might be a little bit of a stretch, but you know how to get them. So you might have done it before, or it's easy to achieve for you, So this would come for me when I'm looking at like business strategy, that would come under your SMART goal. Your SMART goal would be what are termed as a B-type goal. But Bob talks about spoke when he was alive, he spoke about the C-type goals. These are the goals that you've got no idea how you're going to achieve them. None whatsoever. These are the goals where they're like so out there, and it's that journey that you take between where you are now and where you want to be. That's like you've got to become a whole different person. And he talked about it in terms of like raising your vibration, which can sound a bit woo-woo, but actually it's very much about the person you are today has to evolve and change and develop to become that other model of what you want.
Well, it's not woo-woo really, is it? Because
No, it's absolutely not.
if you've lived any kind of life and been on this planet for a few decades, as we both have, then we can look back and see how we've just evolved anyway.
Yeah, life does that to you regardless. It will make you, regardless of whether you want to or not, and it will drag you kicking and screaming.
Do you agree then with that suggestion that we have to start behaving, almost acting as if we are that person who has achieved that
Yeah. There is, so that causes, so that one thing there causes a lot of tension for a lot of people, and it causes a lot of people to give up on their goals really easily. And the reason that it's hard for people to act as if is because we don't have a model, we have no way of knowing what it is really like. So if, say for example, if someone set a goal and said they wanted to earn 50,000 a year, which, I mean, it's not a massive amount, but if they've only ever earned 20,000 a year, they will not know what it feels like. And we have to get it in our body. We have to know it viscerally, what it feels like to be able to act as if. But that doesn't mean going out and spending on a credit card money that you don't have to feel like you've got 50,000, because all that's doing is setting up a more lack and more scarcity and a problem with your finances, that you're going to then start looking at your bank account and thinking, oh, that's not going up, it's just going down and I've got all these bills to pay.
Yeah.
So then you're not in that, you're actually not raising your vibration to that level. What you're doing is you're reducing your vibration, because you're putting yourself in a even worse situation than you was in originally.
I'm glad you've mentioned the body, because I want to ask you, do you think a lot of people don't achieve because they are doing it all at this level, the intellectual level?
Yeah, I mean, it's all very well knowing, but if there's no pattern of knowing and no recognition of the body, because actually science is proving, right, that the body reacts and responds first, and the mind then does what it can to make sense of what that body did, what our bodies do. So for example, most people might have experienced this when, like if you're driving, so you're a driver, so you will have had an experience probably over the decades where you've been driving and there's been something in your peripheral vision that's like made you like react in a way that, like, to take evasive action. Yeah. And so once that's happened, your body actually acted before the mind had chance to even register what was going on. So it might have been that in that experience, it might have been a child. It might just have been, I don't know, a bird or something falling over. Do you know what I mean? That was
Yeah,
not.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but perhaps what you were wanting to convey is the wisdom of the body, the fact that it's ahead of the intellect, really, in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah. And we're physical beings having a spiritual experience. And because, no, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and got that completely back to front. Um,
Up.
Yeah, yeah. We're spiritual beings having a physical experience, and because we're in a body, we have to integrate everything through the body. Whole somatic aspect, which is why I like the breath work so much, because it allows us to integrate our experiences in a way that helps us to not just make intellectual sense of it, but it helps us to, like, our neurology to make sense of it.
I know before we did this podcast, I asked you, didn't I? Because you're trained in so many modalities, which is amazing, because it means that you have an amazing toolkit to bring to your clients. But I did ask you what you thought was the most powerful, and you said breath work.
Yeah, yeah. Breath work for me is like the key. It unlocks our ability to be able to heal the past. It allows us to become in right relationship with ourselves. As we, like we've already spoken, as all those experiences we have as we're growing up, if we don't like ourselves for whatever reason, breath work allows us to be able to move all of that through our bodies. And even if it's an experience that is an external experience. So, for example, one client was involved so she was a front seat passenger in a car that was in a head-on collision with a motorbike.
Gosh.
And for months after that, she couldn't get in a car. She couldn't eat, she couldn't sleep, she couldn't get in a car. She couldn't, it was just like constant flashbacks of that experience. And interestingly, when I took her through the process, she was like, no, I'm not doing that. But she went with it. And afterwards, within like a week after, she actually got in a car for the first time it was nearly a year after this accident. She couldn't get in a car.
Gosh.
She could not, even as a passenger, she couldn't get in there because of this collision. And I mean, now she's teaching like energy work and body work and doing all that herself. But before, like She just could not imagine a world where she would get back in a car at all.
So when we talk about breathwork, so there's a couple of things. I want to ask you how you what you actually mean by breathwork and what you can do. And then, whilst we've been talking about people in the personal development field, I have noticed, I think over the last year or so, that Tony Robbins has started talking more, making reference to how he prepares before he goes in front of his audiences. And he's a huge advocate of breathwork, isn't he?
He is, yeah. So
I
he's,
hadn't realised that.
yeah, he often has Dan Brulé. So he trained and did some training, or had Dan Brulé train some of his facilitators quite a few years ago in breathwork. But there is different styles of breathwork. You've got the yogic style, which is amazing, like the Kundalini yoga breathing practices. There's conscious connected breathing. There's what's called rebirth, which was started by Leonard Orr in the 70s. And there's holotropic breath work, which was started by Stanislav Grof in the 60s, based on, they were doing a lot of practice with, or a lot of research with LSD. LSD became illegal and they couldn't access it. So they started to look at how can you get to those altered states using the breath, because they'd recognised that the ancient sages, the siddhis, there's all breath practices that enable one to have an altered state, to have a numinous, what they call a numinous experience, which could be the same as someone who's meditated for years and reached a samadhi state, where they can sit in alignment. And you can get to that stage using conscious connected breath work. So I combine breath work with acupressure, sound healing, and I run it as a circle or one-to-one. And the combination of the breath work, and it's a conscious connected breathing style. So, you definitely wouldn't sit at the traffic lights in your car doing this type of breath work. It's definitely not. It's a therapeutic style. I do run breath awareness classes where I teach people how to change their state using their own breath, so that they can get out of situations or change situations. Interestingly, one of the techniques that Dan Brulé used to teach Navy SEALs, this is how Tony Robbins ended up getting in touch with Dan Brulé and doing all that work, was he recognised that the Navy SEALs are actually taught breath work practices to calm their nervous system when they're in behind enemy lines in very highly triggering situations, so that because it's a way of overcoming your neurology. Because we have a natural fight and flight response to situations, and when our emotions are really high, our intelligence is really low, because all our effort is on keeping safe. So it becomes very difficult to think straight. And I worked with some young girls who, one of them was very prone to having panic attacks. And what I did was I taught the girls how to recognize when the panic attack was starting, was the first step. And then the next step was showing them what techniques would work. So this friend, it was two girls, and they came with their mums, and I taught them all these techniques. And what happened, one of the girls, the one that didn't have the panic attacks, was able to prevent, by guiding her through this process, the other girl, because she recognised the trigger and stopped her from was able to guide her through the process to prevent her from going into a full panic mode, which previously had meant that the school had had to call an ambulance for this young girl, 13 or 14-year-old, who had these severe panic attacks. So it was very it was quite liberating for them, because the girl then taught the teacher how to do it, so that like that, and that's how it's like this whole ripple effect of how it is helping them. But yeah, so that was like one of the things that was really quite cool. But the mum, so I had a testimonial from the mum of the daughter that had the panic attacks, and herself, when things got too much, she took herself off and did one of the techniques in the cupboard, like, just because she was just like, I need to just change my state. I'm gonna like murder this child, and took herself out of the situation. And the daughter actually like went and knocked on the cupboard door. She said, "Mum, am I annoying you?" And actually it started a process of like self-recognition of how they were interacting. It was funny.
Amazing side effect of that initial work, really.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So sometimes I've done that a few times with people like in groups, and I call that breath awareness. So, becoming aware of your own, where your breath lands in your body can actually be very liberating as well. And we don't always breathe fully and use our full respiratory system. Sometimes we're not taking in enough life force energy. If we're not taking in enough life force energy, we haven't got enough brain power to think straight.
So, going back to our busy lives where we're roaring around and we don't want to be with ourselves,
Yeah,
it seems that that's a pretty important place to start, that ability to be
absolutely.
with yourself.
Yeah,
Doing
yeah,
some journaling to get some clarity, to actually sit with your feelings.
yeah. Yeah, that's really important as well. The whole being able to access how you feel and actually being honest with how you feel and where you feel that in your body, because that we have an amazing resource in this body, this meat suit that we're all standing in. And I think when we can understand its signals and trust the signals that we're getting, we have a better relationship with ourselves. That's, yeah, our own body's wisdom is, yeah, amazing.
And then we've put some breath work in there as well.
Yeah.
So those are quite simple strategies, aren't they, for people?
Thing.
No.
You can do breath work without, there's plenty of sources if people haven't got the funds to pay for it. But if they have, then find a breathwork facilitator that's near to them. I would recommend going and doing a breathwork session, conscious connected, in person with a trained facilitator, because the holding that you get in that space you cannot get when you're doing an online session. And I think, I'm not knocking online, because I think there's a place for that as well, but I think by going to a person and actually experiencing transformational breath or conscious connected breath work in a way that's fully held, because that's something else we don't do in our society. We don't trust ourselves enough, so we don't trust in other people enough to hold us in our grief and in our transformation. And I think once we start to trust ourselves and trust others, we can then do the really deep inner work.
Gosh, isn't life interesting? Aren't we? Aren't people complicated?
Yeah, yeah, it is actually really complicated, but we make it even more so. But it can be quite, I mean, it sounds really simple. Go and do some breathing. Well, everyone breathes. That's the normal response. Everyone breathes. And what can you teach me? It's not about me teaching anybody. It's about being able to tune into your own wisdom, your own body, and tune into the rhythms and the cycles of the natural cycles of life, and being okay with that. Like, it doesn't matter how many cars you've got on the drive or how many, bedrooms you've got in your house. When you're in your box, no, none of that matters.
Absolutely. And people can be very miserable in those settings, can't they? Very
Yeah.
unhappy. How happy do you think we are as a society today? Do you think
Yeah.
we're too busy? Is part of the problem that we are too busy and we distract ourselves all the time? You mentioned social media earlier.
Yeah.
We fill every moment of our lives with something, don't we?
Yeah, busy is something that stops us from tuning into ourselves, which is a result of if we don't like who we are, we don't like ourselves, we don't trust ourselves, we don't want to be with ourselves on our own. There are people that will, as soon as they walk in their house, they'll put a radio or TV on, or because they don't want the silence, because what happens in the silence, they start to hear their own voice, and often that inner voice is not very kind. So because it's not kind, they don't want to hear it. So rather than deal with it, it's easier to just not do anything and just cover it up
Yeah.
with
Going
something
back to,
louder.
going back to the journaling and the breath work, I'm sort of thinking that these strategies are important and powerful if you practice them regularly. So consistency is very
Yeah,
powerful.
it is. And actually, it doesn't need to take very long. So I used to always think that to meditate, you had to sit on a cushion and sit in silence or have a bit of meditation music on, but actually you don't. Like 5 minutes of just standing out, taking a few deep breaths, standing out in the garden is enough, because you disengage the thinking mind and allow the body's wisdom to just align, and just, like, I don't know, going to your nearest park, sitting under a tree, or just walking around, going to a local river if you've got one, or beach, or just walking along and just like noticing what's around you, rather than being in that constant stream of chat, chat, chat.
Yeah. And you're not even aware of what's going on.
Yeah, yeah. And we spend most of our life in autopilot.
Yeah, we do.
And actually, journaling, meditation, and breath work allow you to just disconnect from all that chatter and all that, what I call chit chat. Again, yeah, allows us to realign. And yeah, it's interesting. The first book that I wrote came from journaling. So I started doing morning pages. This was in the early 90s.
Right.
And
Where did they come from, the morning pages?
yeah, it's Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. So that book was amazing. So it was like 3 sides of A4. And quite often in the beginning, I'd just write, I've no idea what I'm going to write. I'm just like, I've got to write 4 pages or 3 pages, and I don't know what I'm going to write. And it's all, like, it's just all BS. And then suddenly it just started to flow, and I never looked at it for probably about 5 or 6 years. I didn't even look at it. I just wrote it down, wrote it down, wrote it down. And actually, it was a way of just emptying out my head of all the stuff, all the drama, and that's when I did actually look back at them about 10 years ago. But they were full of drama of the day, all the trials and tribulations, the problems with the kids, like the normal stuff, the teething problems of moving house and doing all of that stuff. It was all in there. It was all, yeah.
So how then did the book come about?
So I used to do the 3 sides. And one morning, so I used to do it, I used to wake up religiously at 6 and do it every morning. But that particular morning when I wrote my first book, excuse me, I was there till 11 o'clock.
Wow.
And my hand hadn't left my pen hadn't stopped. It was just writing, writing, writing. And that was the first time that I thought, I need to read to see what I've written, because I had no idea what I'd actually written. And it was an outline of, what was it, this book, Ditch the Scars. And which was essentially it was my journey from being, I was a size 16 and went to a Tony Robbins event. And in that event, so the date was the 6th of February 2006. So I'd been doing morning pages for years. Like, I'd started in the early 90s. So I'd been doing it a long time by then. Dreams that I might have had, I just used to note them down as well. But anyway, this while I was, because I went back and crewed every time Tony Robbins was in the UK, I would be on the crew. And one of the people there was a book coach. She was and publisher. So I decided I'd typed up the content that I'd written that morning and sent it to my friend Mindy and asked her what she thought of it. And she just emailed me back. She said, "Can you prove any of it?" So I had to email her back and say, "What do you mean? Can you ask other people to do this technique and then see what the result is? And can you feed that into the book?" Which I did. So I spent the whole of the next year, I coached 100 people through the process in the book and the results were amazing. It's like so I was taking people through, there was a specific, like we was having weekly calls for like throughout those 100 people. They did a 6-week program and we had weekly calls. I'd use NLP techniques, coaching, because I'd done all the coaching stuff. And from that, one lady who'd had horrific early life experiences and was just hideous stuff. I did a lot of timeline work with her. So which is all about taking people back to before the experience and resourcing them, and then taking them through the experience with the resources, which was all, it was all done on an intellectual level, but it all at the time, like she then went on to lose a lot of weight. She now actually runs a very well-known yoga school and has had children and she still stays in touch.
Amazing.
It's quite incredible. I had another lady who went through the program who periodically reminds me how life-changing it was for her as well. She's based in Scotland and it's incredible, the stuff that she's done. Like we built a relationship. There are other coaches who at the time they were training as a coach as well as I was. So that I had this pool of people that were willing and able to participate in a way that was really amazing.
So you got the proof and then you were able to publish.
Yeah, so and on the back of that, publishing the book, I was invited to speak at a conference in Bermuda, which was amazing. And then we went off travelling up the east coast of America.
Yeah, of morning pages and can people still buy that book? Can you still get that book? Is it still available?
I think it is actually. I think it's published by Penguin or Random House. I would highly recommend it.
No, is your book still available?
Oh, yeah, Ditch the Scales. It's available on Kindle because it was published through a publishing house at the time. The expectation is that you rewrite it every couple of years. But I went through a period where I was like not in that space to do it. I'd like to update because I think there's a lot that's still really relevant.
Well, please do, right? Because it sounds like it's really helps people transform their lives.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes it's not. I don't know even how to say this. Sometimes it's because it was so easy to write and because it was so easy to do. My level of appreciation of it wasn't as great as it needed to be in a lot of ways. I know that sounds a bit...
It doesn't.
Yeah, and it wasn't like that at all. So when I did the divine nature of being, I didn't even want to put my name on it. The teachings that was coming through were very much in poetic form. And I had many nights where I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and like with like this message, write this down. And so I literally would get up and write down stuff and then just keep, and then I'd go back to bed and then nights later there'd be more, and it was just like a constant stream of like downloaded information that was just like this. Sometimes you know, like it's like this, like just write this down, and it's like it just comes through, and
It's what they refer to as channeling, isn't it?
yeah. So when I wrote the divine nature of being, when I compiled it based on all these journal entries, it was more like I put by the muse. And actually, that's on my website now. I call them musings. Like when the idea comes, and I just write it and put it on as a musing on my website. So I'm okay with sharing it now, and knowing where it's come from. It comes through me, and the idea just comes through, and it just like
Amazing.
Mm.
What's on the horizon for you in the next year or so? Have you set some new goals for yourself? And it's perfectly fine to say you haven't. What are you going to be doing?
Well, I'm currently on a course called the Medicine Woman Practitioner. So I'm training with a very dear friend called Hoppy Wimbush, and that's all about owning your own voice. And it's really about tuning into natural cycles and natural rhythm. Hoppy runs a lot of courses on natural shamanism, and this is really about owning and honouring myself. So this year has been a year of really honouring me and my own rhythms, and really being able to step into that space of being okay with all of that, whatever that is. I don't know yet. And running ceremonies more, doing more breath work, more healing. I've also got Sacred Abundance, which is another course that I'm launching. So there's lots of things going on,
There
lots
is.
of developments.
Well, we'll put all your social media and how people can reach you in the show notes. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Well, they can reach out either LinkedIn, Facebook, through my website,
What's your website?
donnastill.co.uk.
That's lovely.
And
Well, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And
amazing. Thank you so much for inviting me.
it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you.